Senior Advisor for Veterans and Military Families and Wounded Warriors. And many of you know Kobe or have met him over the course of this past couple of months that he's been with us. Thanks for joining us today. This is a special occasion because it's the first in a new series of webinars that tap into your wisdom and experience as veterans or military families or programs that serve veterans and military families. We want to learn from you, and we also want to learn with you so that we can build a body of knowledge that focuses in particular on education, employment, and health for veterans and military families. We are very delighted to have with us Tricia Thompson today. Tricia's with the Points of Light Institute, and she'll be sharing with you, as you know, the Community Blueprint, which is their approach for identifying and addressing the needs of veterans and military families. So thank you very much for coming today. And Tricia, may I turn it over to you?
Thank you, Margie. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to learn more about the Community Blueprint. The Community Blueprint is an initiative that is led and administered by the Points of Light, but it's really rooted and exists as a result of collaboration at a national level. And the model is really rooted in replicating that collaborative spirit inside local communities across the country. So today is going to be to provide you with the basic background information about the blueprint. So we'll talk about what it is, where it came from, where we are now, where we're headed, and of course give you some information about how you can get involved and leverage these tools and resources in your local community. If you have questions, as Nikki and Margie mentioned, feel free to type those into the chat box. We'll definitely make sure that we address those, and we'll definitely have Q&A time at the very end of our session together today. As with all community solutions, they all begin with a problem. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the problem that existed and resulted in this solution, because the Community Blueprint was really developed to solve a few nationwide issues. The first of which is, as many of you guys, I'm sure, see in your circle of friends and maybe with your family inside your own networks, is that people really are looking for a meaningful way to serve the military community. And they're really not sure where to begin. So oftentimes individuals or groups end up doing very high PR and really high feel-good activities, but really lower impact projects. And so those things are, carts for the troops and backpacks for kids. We have Points of Light. Those projects are very near and dear to our hearts, and we do those quite regularly. But we also know that there is a great need out there to really engage in activities that really will help move the needle on some of these issues and things like housing and homelessness and employment, behavioral health. And so we really recognize that there are opportunities for Americans to engage in a higher level of service to create some systemic changes inside our communities. The other issue or problem that exists in the world, I think, today is and I think the case can be made that this issue exists outside of the military and exists in our civilian community as well. It's really, around the fact that we have lots of organizations doing really great work, but inside communities, there's still many gaps that exist in services, and there's still often duplication services. And I think most importantly is that folks aren't aware of the services that actually exist inside their community and really have a very broken system. It's not necessarily easy to navigate by service members, veterans, and their families. And so for those two big reasons, the Community Blueprint initiative was started as a way to really provide guidance to communities for meaningful, high things to do, to create change, as well as really increase collaboration inside communities to create a network of services. bit of history here. So the blueprint idea started a couple years back at a retreat that happened in White Oak, Florida. Blue Star Families kind of brought together the folks from both the public and private sector, engage in a national conversation around how we can better work together and collaborate and really leverage resources to better serve our military community. So a couple of things came out of that conversation, and one of which was this idea around the need for a blueprint, if you will, and a tool or a resource that you could hand over to community leaders who want to do something more. And this idea resonated with a bunch of people in the room. And the majority of those folks are now serving on our advisory council, and we'll show you a slide here in a second that will who those folks were. But many folks in the room raised their hands and said, I want to work on this project. Let's work together to make this happen. And so there wasn't a budget. It was basically volunteers at a very grassroots level that continued to be on the phone monthly and talk through what this tool, resource, or initiative would look like. And very the group recognized that that we weren't the smartest people in the room, and that we really needed to engage any and everyone that we knew be a part of this conversation to really help shape the vision and the structure and the strategy around this. And so we convened a few times, gatherings actually held at the Red Cross building locally here in D.C., and brought together between 700 organizations that included organizations like the VA, DOD, the Corporation for National and Community Service, of course, has been a part of this conversation from the beginning, and organizations like National Military Family Association and Blue Star Families and Military Child Education Coalition, Cross. So we had, who we thought were really smart in this space there to really inform the strategy. Folks who were part of the conversation said, "No, let's start making some stuff happen." So one of the folks on our advisory council, Barbara Van Dalen, who heads up Give an Hour, founder and CEO, got some money and to actually launch a couple of these pilot sites. So a pilot site started out in Hampton Roads, Virginia, another one in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and some other Blueprint partners decided that they would launch some sites. So the Military Officers Association of America has started a couple of sites, Red Cross. So over time, organizations have stepped up and said, yeah, we want to do this, and let's launch it in a small way and learn from those communities so that we can take it to scale. We also, through the American Legion Auxiliary, approached the Corporation for National Community Service with this idea, and we said, we really love and support us through VISTA to help build the capacity at the national level to develop these tools and resources, and thankfully provided us with that. But over time, we have the tools, we have the resources, we have some boots on the ground, but we recognized that we really needed a home for this initiative. And so at that point, a task force was kind of convened out of the larger group to help find home. And Points of Light was approached to become the administering aid, if you will, because we weren't experts in the military base, which actually provided us some benefit because we were a very neutral party. And I think we weren't experts in the military space, but we are experts in is really kind of understanding how to mobilize communities and the average American to kind of get behind this and make this stuff happen in local communities. We also have assets that we can bring to the table as far as our lot of AmeriCorps and our affiliate structure across the country, and so things of that nature. So for various reasons, they felt like we would be a good partner. And so as of June of last year, Points of Light has been leading this initiative and really trying to kind of think about how we can take it to scale. you'll see the list of folks who are currently on our advisory council. And I think it speaks to the fact that this is not a points of light initiative. It is not a given initiative. It is not a Red Cross initiative. This is a we initiative. And I think that's what's made it so successful, that this has been a shared initiative from the very beginning. And while we are leading it and moving it forward now, we still maintain that collaborative nature and work to encourage communities to, in fact, kind of replicate that and do the same locally. Community Blueprint Network. Where did we in fact land? Well, the network is really about bringing together community leaders, individuals, government, nonprofits, all together to really create an integrated solution locally to help address some of the challenges facing the military community. So it's really all about collaboration, innovation. It's about driving kind of towards sharing effective practices with each other, learning from each other, lifting those up, replicating those, scaling those, and at its roots is a framework, a way to kind of think about this work, and really meaningful how-to guides. It's a roadmap. It's a roadmap for communities to help kind of address some of these issues. And we've bucketed this work into 8 issue areas, and so you'll see those on your screen: behavioral health, education, and family strength, financial legal services, housing, reintegration, and volunteering. So within each of those 8 buckets, we have promising practices, which will basically provide you with meaningful things to do. So Nikki, if you can go to the next slide, we'll give some examples of those promising practices. So, for instance, under behavioral health, one of our promising practices is provider training. So, there's lots of mental health providers out there, but oftentimes they're not necessarily aware of the specific challenges facing our veterans. And so oftentimes it's really about finding an expert in that space and engaging them to train others, or leveraging training that's already out there to go around and help kind of educate providers in the area. Let's see. Career counselor training. We know that there's a huge asset and resource within our education, but oftentimes they're not necessarily, kind of versed in the challenges that our vets are facing, and military spouses are facing, and so really it's just a matter of kind of providing them with the guidance so they are more aware and can be of better benefit to the military community. Next. A few more examples. So within family strength, child care, employment, job fairs, and so really the promising practices are kind of, provide ideas for meaningful things to do, but also provide a how-to guide or kind of a roadmap for actually how to do that locally, along with some ideas for success measures. So for instance, with engaging in, if you're going to put a job fair for veterans, well, you might make sure that you're focusing on getting veterans and military spouses jobs, and so that should be your metric for success. And so we provide guidance and tools for that as well. Next slide. We started with the problem, and I'll stop here and say that we really do think that the community blueprint is not. It is a solution to many of those problems. Very transparent from the beginning. This model is not perfect. The tools are perfect. None of this is perfect. We have said from the very beginning as a collective group that we want whatever knowledge and resources and tools that we have to be put out there and given to the public, and and also provide a feedback loop so we can learn, how to make it better. We do feel that what we have created together collectively does create community connections. It helps raise awareness locally and ensures shared leadership, which I think, once again, has contributed to the success of this model and it really helps move communities to action. So we, encourage communities to kind of, pick a practice and move it forward. An easy win. And it really drives communities towards action, helps avoid duplication, and builds on existing community assets. And I think this one is most favorite, is that it really works to engage the military community as the asset that they are and reserves a space for them at the table. And so since I think oftentimes the message that we are getting in the public is really around veterans and military families as charity cases, and not. They are huge assets, civic assets inside communities, and need to be a part of this conversation. And so I think that one of the values that we embrace as a collective, hope that you do the same, is that these folks need to be at the table and help to shape what meaningful response looks like inside their communities. We do believe that making sure that there's opportunities for civilians and military to serve alongside each other, that is of great importance to us. That I think just shows kind of managed chaos, and I think often, first time I shared this slide with somebody, they were like, "Holy cow, Tricia, what is this?" But I think generally, that we are complex individuals, and that complexity transcends inside our community. So this whole kind of model is really about bringing all of these pieces together, that they work as a part of a larger network. We know that inside communities we have volunteers, and we have the faith-based community, we have donors and people who want to fund initiatives, and we have organizations who are doing great work. So it's really about kind of providing a framework and a platform for all of these things to come together to better serve the military community. And we see that happening in these 8 areas. The reason why you see volunteerism bolded here is because we feel like that is the way we are going to achieve all of the other work, because our communities are not getting infused with resources. We are very resource strapped, and so we know that we need to leverage volunteers as a platform in order to help move the needle on some of these larger issues. So ways that communities can get involved. We understand that communities are kind of coming to this work from various perspectives. So, we have a couple of our communities who are doing kind of our deep community engagement model, which is happening in Hampton Roads and Fayetteville. And that's really been where, you start from a place of not really knowing the issues that exist. Right? So you're saying, let's really bring all the stakeholders together, have a conversation about what is happening in the space of employment, and was that helping to meet the needs of veterans and military spouses. What is happening in the space of education, and so really just having that kind of broader conversation about who's already working in this space, where are their gaps, where are there assets that can be leveraged, and creating a plan of action to in fact kind of meet needs, leveraging assets, and working collectively as a group to help address those issues. So that's the kind of deep engagement approach. The second is really kind of practice and do it. So, if you want to hold a job fair, then here's the how-to guide, and, means work with, folks in your community who are engaged in the employment space and make it happen. So, that's very easy. We know every community can do the deep-rooted engagement model, but at least they could, pull this to the web and go talk to their local school about, the need to be aware of the military children that exist in their school system. So there's kind of a grow and go version, if you will, of this. Or there could be a community that says, well, we just want to tackle employment this year and focus simply on employment. And so it's somewhat modular in the sense that they can kind of pull tools and implement those. Then we have a hybrid approach, right? So, communities who are in fact doing kind of that deep-rooted engagement, but also want to get an easy win, which is what Givenhour did in their communities. Is they're engaging the stakeholders. They're having the conversation about what community is already doing and where there are gaps and that kind of stuff. But I also recognize that it's really good to work together on a project and really kind of build relationships and really, kind of gain momentum. So, they are implementing one, if not more, of the promising practices that first year. Of course, we feel that, they're what kind of implementing the promising practices or, convening your community, be volunteer opportunities and volunteer projects that come from that. So theoretically, this kind of structure will help feed volunteer opportunity pipeline, if you will. So ideally, individuals will be able to, go and find a project that would connect with this local effort, moving forward. Next. We are at a place where we have promising practices online. We have many more that will become available moving forward. Launched this effort in 14 communities, and that looks very different in every community. Like I said, some communities are doing a very deep-rooted engagement approach. Some communities are simply focused on one of these two areas, and some are simply taking, I'm just going to do a job fair this year. And so it ranges as far as what people are doing. But we are working right now. We've maintained partnerships with the White House Joining Force Initiative, the Corporation for National and Community Service, obviously. And we're working on our option strategies and thinking about how we get these tools and resources out there in front of people and get people mobilized around them. We're thinking about, people like U.S. Chamber. They're going to be in 400 communities for their Hiring Our Heroes program. And one of the things that they say is that, employers are looking at them and saying, hey, what else can we do? And community leaders are looking at them and saying, hey, what else can we do? And so, we're going to be working with them on handprint in those communities so that they will have ideas for things that they can do when the chamber leaves. So the types of things that we're kind of thinking about doing, we're kind of working on having those conversations at a national level. And then obviously we are working on, some funding because obviously we know that funding helps things move faster. So of course our goal is to help, fund some of these efforts in local communities and provide a support structure around this. So not only do we have tools and resources, we have communities and experts doing this, but we are kind of create space for community leaders to get on the phone call once a month and, chat about their challenges and their successes and Point Light is taking ownership of documenting all of those and then feeding it back out to the sector. So we're doing that through, obviously, our website, but most importantly, leveraging things like the Knowledge Network that Margie will, speak about, and hopefully you guys are all already aware of through the Corporation for National and Community Service. So leveraging tools like that to really kind of push out the information and the things that we're learning inside communities. So where are we? These are the communities where there is some sort of blueprint activity already existing. And one thing I'll say that some communities have, moved full ahead and have had tons of success. Others are just getting started. But the stars need that is where a national service member represent, and we are hoping to leverage the corporation for national and community service moving forward, so that we can have more stars on this chart and more communities on this chart. But the idea here is that we have some communities where we are providing some sort of resource to them so that they in fact can do this work. But some of these communities have approached points of light and said, hey, your model sounds exactly like what we're trying to do here in San Diego, for instance, or Dallas, for instance. And so they've connected with us and are just becoming part of this larger conversation and larger initiatives. Just because I think that the problem that we're seeing in the country is that lots of organizations are doing great work. But once again, it's over the place. And so I think that there's a yearning, I think, for all of us to pick something and work together on it. And so I think that that's why we're getting calls from folks to say, hey, we'll be a part of it. It is an opportunity for them to connect in some shape or form and have us tell our story together as part of the narrative of how communities and how organizations are responding and what we're doing in service with veteran service members and their families. So our long-term goals, end of 2014, we want to expand it to 200 communities, and you'll see engage over 20,000 veterans as mentors and volunteer leaders in their communities, engaging over 500,000 volunteers. So those are our long-term goals. Our shorter-term goals is that we are going to be officially launching the Community Blueprint Network. We have the National Conference on Volunteering and Service coming up in June in Chicago, and a Community Blueprint Summit, which is a pre-conference event. And we've got some great speakers lined up for that, and it's really going to be kind of a deep dive for leaders who are, in fact, wanting to kind of think about how they do this inside their community, how they get started. That will be a place for them to do that. You can learn more about that summit at the National Conference on Volunteering and Service website. So if you just Google that, for more information there. We're going to continue to work with the corporation as our national partner and think about how we can kind of increase in our capacity for doing this work. And then, of course, we're hiring a veteran to lead this work. Moving forward, I've been doing this since June, and I'm a military brat, so this work resonates with me. But I haven't been there and done that, and so really feel like we need to have a veteran until we work moving forward. So I hope to have them on board in the next couple weeks. Next one. There, and see if we have some questions. I saw a few kind of pop up in the chat box. I'm going to try to get these myself, and Nikki, if I miss one, just please. So one question is, can other national veteran agencies be added to the list? The answer to that is yes, definitely. This has always been a very big tent, larger initiative that we want everyone to join. I will, in all transparency, say that I'm starting to kind of think about what that looks like. So we've been smaller. We've had a quote-unquote advisory council, which their role is really to provide guidance into kind of this strategy and moving forward and really be kind of our, help points of think about this work. So I'm also seeing this opportunity to kind of have a larger coalition. So not only have the advisory council who the role of providing meeting with us and providing guidance, but also creating this kind of structure for this larger coalition of organizations to come together. So it's something definitely that we're thinking about. But yes, if you're interested, Anita, I'd love for you to type in the chat box, or I'll give you my contact information in a minute, and we can chat offline with that. And information about the slides. So if you didn't receive the slides for this webinar, Nikki will definitely send out a follow-up to everyone with this attachment. And it will also be posted on the website, www.communityblueprintnetwork.org. And then Anita has a question about how does this model connect with the CADCA Strategic Prevention Framework? So I'm going to need to, is there any way that we can unmute Anita's line so that she can tell a little bit more about the CADCA Strategic Prevention?
Absolutely. Actually, Anita's name is not associated with her call in. I think you just hit pound, Anita. Would you be willing to type that into the chat? Sorry about that. I may give Anita a couple minutes to do that. Tricia, there was another question that came privately to me from Renee that I'll go on and read to you. Have you thought about working in collaboration with the National Guard, who is in communities throughout the country and is often involved with local community resources? National Guard Family Assistance Centers are located throughout the country, over 350 locations at this time. Also, states run inter-service family assistance committees that bring these organizations together. And I know you already talked about being more inclusive, but I don't know if you want to talk about that, the National Guard in particular.
Yep, I'm grateful that that question came up, because I actually saw Quentin Collins' name in the participant list. And so we're happy to say that we are in very close communication with the National Guard Bureau. They have some really exciting stuff coming out in transitioning kind of what was formerly known as the ISFAC into what is going to be rebranded as Joining Community Forces Group. And so they have some really great goals moving ahead and thinking about how they can kind of do blueprints, right? I mean, what the ISFAC model is the community blueprint. I mean, it's a similar structure. So I've been in close contact with Quentin and helping to kind of help and getting them to help us to think about how we can fuse these two initiatives together. So where there is an ISFAC, for instance, then we will provide them with the blueprint tools so that they can leverage those if they want. And if they are an ISFAC and they want to belong to the Community Blueprint Network, the big network, then we would love that as well. So I think that there's definitely there's more to be discussed, but I want you to hear that yes, those conversations are happening, and they have wonderful leadership over there at the National Guard Bureau. So we've been, we're ready to see what that partnership looks like moving forward. And and there's a place for the corporation for National Community Service in there as well. So we're all three kind of having that conversation about what that partnership looks like.
Thanks. So Anita did send some more information. The CADCA is hosting VetCorps and is a primary training arm for free communities and is encouraging VetCorps sites to use their strategic prevention framework that includes assessment, planning, evaluation, and implementation protocols. And so I'll add that another participant offered to be able to speak to this issue too. So if you need more information, I'll go on and unmute him, or you can address what Anita added.
Great. I wanted to confirm that was the initiative that came from the Corporation for National Community Service in conjunction with. So I get where you are now. And yes, so I am still learning about what the goals are for VetCorps, but I do believe that there is strong potential there for collaboration and really better understanding kind of what their goals are and what their, I guess, footprint to be, and how many communities are there, and these will there be VetCorps members and what specifically their goals, and so I need to get smarter about that. So if you have more information about that, Anita, would love to get that from you so that I can be smarter and connect with them to make sure that they're aware of the blueprint and see what we can do together.
Thanks. So a couple other questions just to help you track them here. We had a question from Cynthia, your mention of education, and she's wondering if there are specific communities involved in the network that are focused on school-age children and drilling down even more on special education.
Yeah, so our part right now when it comes to education K through 12 are mirror over at the Military Child Education Coalition, and then of course we have National Military Family Association and Blue Families, as well as AmeriCorps Promise Alliance. So those are our core partners right now when it comes to K-12, but we definitely recognize that there's more to be done, and so I'm not sure that helps, or if you have suggestions for other folks that we need to have conversations with, but I would love to hear that.
Thank you. Another question that popped up is Christina wondering whether you'll be placing AmeriCorps members, I guess, at U.S. Chambers Hiring Our Heroes program.
Aware of that. One of the things that we've been talking with the chamber about is that whenever they travel to communities, they've recognized in the beginning that not everybody was necessarily showing up well equipped for the hiring fair, and so they needed things like childcare. They needed things like resume writing workshops before the hiring fair, mock interviews before the hiring fair, things of that nature. So those are like prime volunteer opportunities that I think all of us can kind of think about how we can provide those opportunities locally. But so we've been thinking about leveraging AmeriCorps members inside organizations across the country to do the kind of job readiness type of stuff prior to the hiring fair coming. But I don't think that we've thought about putting them inside the chamber necessarily, but definite partnership with the chamber.
Thank you. Other questions coming through right now. We'll give folks a little bit more time to type, and I might, a couple people offer to say a little bit more about that CADCA prevention framework. So since we've got some time, I might go ahead and unmute Jeremy Foreman, who offered, and we can hear a little bit more about that while we give folks time to ask some more questions. So, Jeremy, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
That's fine. I'm actually sitting in front of it. CADCA is the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. So it's an alliance of prevention-based organizations. The Strategic Prevention Framework is an initiative that came through the Department of Health and Human Services, and the CDC actually uses it a lot towards prevention efforts to help prevent, delay, or reduce disability from chronic disease and illness, specifically related to substance abuse and mental health. But it's something that can be applied to any area of community problem solving. So you'll see it used in health and education and workplace productivity, community engagement, that kind of stuff. As the other caller mentioned, there are 5 primary areas that the Strategic Prevention Framework focuses on, and so there's assessment, capacity building, strategic planning, implementation, and evaluation. And then there are overlying functions of building program sustainability and cultural competence. So it's a great framework for how your community can engage in addressing the issues that it sees, and particularly with veterans issues, the mental health side of things and substance abuse, there are some direct resources that are available through CADCA. Their website is cadca.org. And I'll go ahead and put it in the chat, the specific link directly to the Strategic Prevention Framework information. They've got lots of primers, and they've got some research and evaluation briefs and some toolkits that are available. They're tested and tried, and your state might actually have a Strategic Prevention Framework state incentive grant. I think there are about 35 states that have had those. And so there's local resources in pretty much every community across the country that you can tap into if you'd like to use this particular model as your structure for accomplishing the work that your coalition or your local community blueprint might take on.
Thanks, Jeremy, for jumping in. That was really helpful, and thank you also for posting the website. On and put back on mute. We did another question, Tricia, that popped in through the Q&A feature. From the list of the 55 organizations involved with Community Blueprint, this particular participant did not see the Military Order of the Purple Heart and is wondering if anyone has reached out to that organization for assistance and input.
Great question, and I do not have the list of organizations who have been involved in since its inception in front of me, but that's definitely something that I can research. But I think but I think the intention for that question was really kind of encouraging us to reach out to them and making sure that they have a seat at the table. So I hear you, and I will definitely take that back and make that happen.
A question that came in while we were hearing from Jeremy regarding K-12 organizations. One of the initiatives they are engaged in, and I know you talked about that a little bit, how can other organizations who are school-focused assist? So this might cross time frames with your earlier answer, but if there's anything else you want to add about K-12
environment. One of the things that we're thinking about inside Polite is the use of service, how that can be a tool with kids, military kids primarily, and as a military brat, I can attest to this. Transitioning from school to school was super difficult for me growing up. It's hard to establish your roots, hard to kind of gain leadership skills because oftentimes you're new to a community, so you really don't kind of get the opportunity to run for student council or So we've been thinking about how to leverage service as a tool to really provide military kids with the opportunity to kind of create roots through service inside their communities, create connections with other kids, that type of thing. And so if you have a pen and can jot this down, and maybe Nikki, if you can put this into the chat box, if you go to our Generation On website, so it's generationon.org, we have a boatload of tools and resources available for educators, for parents, and for community leaders who want to leverage service as a strategy to help military kids and civilian kids for that matter. So one of our models is through the Kids Care Club. So it's, establishing a club where kids identify service opportunities and projects that they engage in. They, kind of size to the kids. So I think it's not the answer to your question. It's one approach that I can say that we have some tools and resources for. Would encourage you to explore. But I think that there's a lot more work to be done. And once again, this initiative, we have some ideas for strategies around how to kind of bridge the gaps and meet some of the needs for these kids. But we've in no way exhausted, the list. And so, we're definitely going to be working with our national partners to kind of help develop and create additional tools to guide communities. So.
Thank you for that. I did post the generationon.org website, and I also shared a message from Quentin Collins about the Joining Forces initiative and what the National Guard is doing that went to all panelists. And Quentin, I'm going to go on and unmute you and give you opportunity if you want to jump in and add anything to that. So again, hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but you are unmuted now.
Well, thank you very much, Nikki, and I'm happy that I was able to join in on this. I noticed you've got several people on here that I've crossed paths with in various areas. National Guard Bureau was part of the initiative program through the former chairman's office on strategic communications to families. And one of the things that was highlighted was the what we used to refer to as Inter-Service Family Assistance Committees, or ISFACs. Realizing that ISFAC sounded very militaristic and it was more like a top-down, we talked with our state family program directors, executive council, and working with them, they agreed and they actually came up with the name Joining Community Forces, which is more apropos, grassroots, community-level activity. Each can be at a geographic location or a community of like-minded people working together to create less confusion and more cohesion when it comes to collaborative messages and communication, and remove a lot of duplicity. And working with our Office of Secretary of Defense, Military Communities, Family Policies, I think two of them on this call as well. And just, this is not a program, this is just nothing but a communications protocol, working with community print, and looking forward to where we're going ahead, because we are in the communities already.
Thanks for jumping in. I also wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge another comment that came in a couple times from Stephanie about our poll in the beginning, that we did ask about veterans and military spouses, but not about military parents. So that's a great point, Stephanie, and we're going to add that next time we do a poll of this nature. So I just wanted to acknowledge your suggestion and welcome any military parents who are joining us. So I don't see any more questions for you, Tricia, right now, and I know Margie wanted to spend a few minutes closing out the call with some announcements about some other resources that are available. So, Margie, I'm going to go on and invite you to...
Great, so much, Nikki, and thank you, Tricia, for your wonderful description of the network. It's an interesting, happy problem we have, all of these resources out there at local, state, and county, national levels, and the coordination and collaboration that the Blueprint evidences is quite a wonderful example of a problem that's being solved locally. And thank you, too, for those people who posted their questions and shared some of their resources on the chat. And I'm particularly happy about that, because we're looking for other examples of roadmaps or models or tools or programs that have been successful at engaging veterans and military families, particularly around increasing employment, housing, wellness, and opportunities and access for education. So if you are interested in either participating in a webinar with others or doing your own webinar, please email me to mlegowski@cns.gov, and I put my email address into the chat box. And I'd also like to ask you to consider joining the Veterans and Military Families Knowledge Network if you haven't already done so. And really, if you've joined it and are kind of a lurker and haven't kind of gotten yourself in there to put some comments in, we're setting up a new forum that's it doesn't have a specific topic, so you can just throw in your thoughts and ideas there and start some conversations going about the things that are of interest to you and the needs that you have. And the person to contact for that is Laura Norvik, who is at the National Service Resource Center at ETR Associates, and Lauren has put her contact information in the chat box as well. Again, if you have any challenges, you've got addresses in here, and we'll make sure to come to you with the answers to some of these questions in a follow-up email. But we really want you to know that we're delighted to have you in this network. This is what it's all about, the sharing among practitioners. And we look forward to seeing you and hearing you on May 30th, when we'll be featuring the American Legion Auxiliary Bob Reek, and also Teresa Long, who is a Corporation for National and Community Service State Office Director. They're going to be talking about veteran service organizations and the ins and outs of what they are, how to access them, and the services and opportunities afforded in those kinds of connections. So I'd like to just say thank you again for participating, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Take care, everyone.
And thank you, Tricia, and everyone for joining us.
Thank you.